Coogs house as the transfer portal closes in men's college basketball, and Houston still does not have a replacement for Milos Uzan. Does that tell us something about his NBA draft status?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who can't step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. But you make your first listen each and every day. Join the conversation. But you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. If you can't tell by my own nasaliness, I'm going through the allergy thing right now. Are you a Claritin, a Zyrtec? What do you do when that spring thing gets you in the nostrils? Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports. We're going to have more on that fun later. But we got a lot to talk about today. Miles Uzan's draft projections are coming out as the draft is kind of unfolding before our eyes a little bit in the NBA side of things. We also want to look at 2026 recruiting, because it sounds like that's what the Houston Cougars are frankly already doing on the trail right now. That seems to be where the focus is. We'll get to that in the second segment. And last but not least, we're starting to figure out what that schedule is going to look like for Houston Cougar basketball next season. And I've got some favorites I want to circle. But first, the transfer portal closed on Tuesday in men's college basketball. Some notable things happen, including our own Javier Francis name, I guess technically, is put in it. You see that with a lot of guys that are actually out of eligibility, including Javier, in case in the modern basketball college world, you have some sort of a sudden gaining of an eligibility year for whatever reason, they would be able to find a school to play for. Javier, I think, was one of those guys that puts his name in the transfer portal because he also knows that Houston's roster is kind of set for next season. So if something crazy were to happen, he would at least have some flexibility there. Nothing, I think, too crazy to read into that. I don't think that Houston would fight him trying to get back to Houston either. But that's neither here nor there. He's not currently able to play college basketball next year at all. You saw a handful of big names do that at the wire there. What you did see, though, is in the last few years, as the transfer portal has become a bigger deal, the transfer portal closing has effectively been when guys stop declaring for the NBA draft. Now, technically, players have until the 26th to decide if they want to enter, and then they go to the combine from May 11th to 18th and have until the 26th of May, or 28th of May, I'm sorry, to pull their name out of it. So you'll see a lot more in May about the NBA and people going through that combine, getting evaluated, getting draft grades, theoretical grades, right? And then ultimately deciding to stay or leave the draft process. In the early stages of this, Miles Uzan has put his name in the NBA draft with the option to come back to Houston. As said, he would come back to Houston. It is not uncommon for Kelvin Sampson players to go get evaluated. It has happened a lot. Milos's grades right now, though, are in the mid 40s. Some have them in the early 40s. So one projection had it in the 30s. One projection had him not drafted at all. It's unclear if that was because they think he'll pull out of the draft or not. The big deal for all of that is you're not seeing him projected anywhere presently in the first round, the first 30 picks of the draft. And frankly, even if you saw him projected at 28, 29, 30, a grade in that range probably doesn't mean that the guy stays in the draft if they have college eligibility remaining, because ultimately those second round picks don't get guaranteed contracts. Those first round picks do. Flirting with that line could be disastrous. If you have the option not to, you shouldn't. And Milos has the option not to. And so unless something dramatically changes there, I don't think that he's going to stay in. And I also think Houston's got an understanding of that as well. We have not heard Sampson say it or anything like that. But top guys left in the portal because they can put their name in the portal, but they're really only able to get out when someone signs them, which can happen at any time. There are top names in the portal that are guards: PJ Hackerty, RJ Lewis, Darian Williams might be a Jayhawk in the next couple of days, but he's kind of the exception of the top whatever names that are guards. So what you're saying, though, is a lot of options that Houston could be going after if they were seriously concerned that Milos was gone. And instead, they're not. And I think that means they got a pretty good understanding of Milos's intentions. And it sounds like that top 25, top 20 range is pretty big. He'd have to have a pretty crazy good combine, in which case he should go, right? I say that to say that I think that it's safe to say Miles will be returning. Houston may actually have a 15-man roster next year for the first time in God knows how long. They had that not to say they hadn't dabbled in talking to some of these guys. There was, I think, some different reporting, sleuthing, indicated that Houston had some like, hey, if Milos leaves, then we'll talk kind of talks with Clay Mallory or the Aberdeen kid from Florida or whatever. And ultimately that they didn't go get one of those point guards feels like the biggest signal that Milos is returning, right? And I don't mean that to say that everything always goes Houston's way or anything like that, but point guards would kill to play for Kelvin Sampson if given the chance. Look at what he's done in developing, the system has done, the culture has done in developing point guards for a long time. It's why Milos went to come play at Houston as well. It's why Pop Isaac came in as a combo guard that he is. And a lot of these guys, right, would just like salivate at the option to come turn into the kind of pro that Sampson has turned the 3-star recruits into. And they're like, okay, but I'm a such a, like, what can I turn into? Like, they took Marcus Sasser, turned him into a top 25 pick. Jamal Shed has an outside shot at the second team all rookie this year, right? Quentin Grimes, career reborn. He's in the NBA. We could go to Legique Giroux come out of nowhere, or Galen Robinson still bouncing around the G League, and Rob Gray and Corey Davis still getting paid to play basketball out there in the world. Guys that other people said couldn't do it. Sampson saw something in them, developed that, turned them into something, right? And you're frankly about to see what he does with 5-star kids next year. But because no one has at the point guard spot committed to Houston, I feel like that's the indicator that Milos Uzan's staying. And hear me out, this roster next year is kind of ridiculous. You replace LJ Cryer with Pop Isaacs at a 2-guard, high volume scorer, and combo guard, right? Ball in his hands a lot. Freshman Chris Sinak, he is able to play that power forward kind of center, kind of like Jawan Roberts did a year ago. Obviously, this kid's 18. Jawan Roberts is a 6-year guy, but that's an important position for what Houston does. And then your other 3 starters, assuming Milos comes back, are returning from a team that went to the national championship game and nearly won it, right? JoJo Tugler's a Naismith Defense Player of the Year candidate. And Emmanuel Sharp was Regional Player of the Year and Big 12 Tournament Player of the Year. Milos Uzan had 22 points in the Sweet 16 and played lockdown defense across some of the nation's top point guards en route to a trip to the national championship game. Really pretty strong starting 5. All of a sudden off the bench, you're pulling in 5 stars and 5-star caliber guys in Kingston Fleming and Isaiah Harwell. Ramon Walker will be back. Jacob McFarland is back and healthy. Who knows what position Chase McCarty is going to play in this whole thing or whatever. Like, you've got a really, really talented and deep roster. And still, you've got this, Houston gets the number 1 preseason ranking in most people's way too early evaluation for next year, right? They're way too early rankings all have Houston at the top or near the top. And people are commenting like, do they deserve it? They lost all that senior leadership. They had to have LJ Cryer carry them against Gonzaga and Duke. And what happens if he's gone? Jawan Roberts is there for a half decade. What happens if he's gone? They won all those close games. Can they bank on that again? And the answer is yes. They can do it all again. They can get back there, and they can be better. We had this conversation a year ago when Jamal Shed left. 2 years ago, Marcus Sasser, Jarris Walker both left. Before that, it was Kyler Edwards and Fabian White. Before that, it was Quentin Grimes and Ladiki Giroux. Before that, it was Nate Hinton. Before that, it was Galen Robinson, Corey Davis, and Monty Brooks, all in the same year. Before that, it was Rob Gray. Before that, it was Damian Dotson. This culture is what wins. Great names have come through. Great basketball players continue to come through and continue to be a part of the team you and I love to cheer for. The program keeps going forward. The train never stops. This thing's just going to keep going. And I understand that is to say, like, how do you keep going? But you were roughly 65 seconds away from winning a national title. And frankly, you might have even been just a possession away at that. How much more keep going is there really? And that's not to say there won't be setbacks. Last year, the team was better than the year before in terms of results, but they started the year off 4-3, where the year before went through a non-conference undefeated, right? And that's two dramatically different years, right? All I'm saying is that this program and team will find the ways to replace those guys, will keep moving forward, will keep moving better. This thing doesn't regress, right? There'll be learning curves. There'll be times to teach Kingston Fleming and Isaiah Harwell and Chris Sinak how to play Houston Cougar basketball. There'll be learning curves for Pop Isaacs, a college veteran who's got to adjust to a new system. But that doesn't mean it's moving backwards. Just moves forwards. And I think it's moving forward with Milos Uzan based on how things have gone. Now, speaking of moving forward, a big piece of news on Tuesday was that Kelvin Sampson visited a particular recruit in Iowa, not Caitlin Clark. Oh, she'd be great. We'll talk more about that in 1 second. But before we get there, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel, because the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers this incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, join FanDuel, place your first $5 bet. You get $250 back in bonus bets if that bet hits. I love how easy it is to get on the action, whether it's the Houston Rockets or other teams across the association, in the moment, at tip-off, after tip-off, with live in-game action as well. Combine all kinds of live game props into a same-game parlay for a chance to win really big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 back in bonus bets today. Park Rangers Locked on Coogs here. And look at the future of the Houston Cougar basketball program. And some of the biggest news on Tuesday for the Houston Cougar basketball program was that within 12 hours of throwing out the first pitch at the Houston Astros game on Monday night, with, I guess, the entire basketball team was actually there. Joanne Roberts, I guess, walked up the mound with Sampson to throw that pitch. Sampson was very quickly, it appears, on a flight to Iowa. Now, while I have trouble coming up with a bunch of reasons to go to Iowa besides watching certain basketball players, Ar Fondian is a 7-footer that needs your attention. He goes to this, it's an Iowa prep school, and he also plays for the Guinea under-17 team, which where a lot of his highlights are online, frankly. He's listed as a top 75 player consensus in the class of 2026, but he's also like a top 10 big on every ranking. And so when you're looking at centers, potentially replace JoJo Tugler next offseason, I think that's a really big piece of this. I think there's a chance he's a one-and-done guy, but I think the reality is you'll probably get him for a couple years, and that's a really big part of what Houston's doing in building this program. And I don't mean that he's a project, but this Ar Fondian guy is tall, listed 7 foot tall, and the measurements come from the Basketball Without Borders programs. They're very official measurements: 7 foot tall, 7'3" wingspan, standing reach of 9'5", standing reach of 9'5", listed 315 pounds. Again, all those measurements could change a little bit by the time it shows up to Houston, but they were pretty official in that they were done at a combine-like atmosphere. And the guy's just a giant. I mean, obviously he's dwarfing Sampson next to him in the pictures from the visit, but really, really good feet for a guy that big. Really like, and I went back and watched him after the fact. I'm not going to act like I had studied up this guy beforehand. I liked how well he uses his body angles and post up, sets his feet early before the catch. It probably, now that I've said that, get called for like hooking or whatever, pulling the guy behind him with his elbow on his first possession in college as a Houston Cougar someday. But he really uses his back to the basket angles well. And again, the footwork for a guy that big is pretty impressive. He wants to dunk everything. He wants to get inside of 5 feet, use the standing reach and punch everything. You got to love it. I like, in watching the clips, how well he positions his body for offensive rebounds. It's not the athletic hustle you see out of a Tugler guy. He's just not quite the athlete yet. But he's he understands like the way his wingspan works to his advantage, catch radius, that kind of stuff, and just seals off big chunks of the basket, and he can just catch the ball where other guys can't reach it yet as it's coming off of the rim. So it doesn't give a chance to get out there for other people. I think he's got really good shooting touch too inside the 5 to 15 foot area. He's obviously not a 3-point shooter or anything like that, but like he shoots a good 10-foot jump shot. He has a good little fade away from 5, 10, 8 feet. He's really, really impressive. And I think that Houston's pretty interested. I would think that if after throwing the first pitch in, I almost said Minute Maid Field, what you're going to tell me in the comments when it's called, formerly Minute Maid Field. If throwing the first pitch on Monday night, Sampson at 69 is getting up, getting on a plane, and flying out to Iowa to chase this guy down in person, not sending an assistant coach, not having a Zoom call. He's going to meet him in person. I think that's a good sign. I also think it's a guy that wants to play aggressive, which fits Houston's culture. And looking at his frame and natural skills, you give that kid, a couple years in a program with Alan Bishop and Kellen Sampson working the bigs. That dude's he's built in this style of play to be like an NBA All-Star. He needs some work, but he's got some intangible things about his game that pop off screen very, very quickly. And looking at other 2026s, there's some talk about Houston being interested in a kid named Junior County, who's the other Wasatch Academy guard. Wasatch Academy is where Isaiah Harwell was. And frankly, I actually had watched some of Junior County's game just in watching Isaiah Harwell. If you've also watched Isaiah Harwell's Wasatch Academy stuff, Junior County's number 15 on the roster there. He's a pretty scorer. Like when he scores, shoots off the dribble, off catch and shoot, it looks pretty effortless. Growing defender. You can see in watching their stuff from early in the year to late in the year, just last season, he's getting better as a defender. I think playing at the Wasatch Academy level is like a big step up, and you're seeing like that play out in real time when you watch them last year. Look, Isaiah Harwell was the man for Wasatch Academy. He got all the ISO calls. He got all the plays. He frankly dominated the games they were in as far as the score goes. And so it'll be interesting to see what Junior County does when the ball's in his hands in a lot more of those situations next year. But the dude can score. And again, he played at the highest level of high school basketball available to him last year and was an important and impactful player. Right. And so there's the connection with Isaiah too. They're a year apart, and I don't know if Isaiah's a one and done or not. Right. But there could be some connection there as well. So keeping an eye on a kid named Junior County up at Wasatch Academy. I still think my favorite perimeter guy though in this class that Houston's interested in is Anthony Felesi at Utah Prep. Felesi's so aggressive, right? The way I described this game to somebody I was texting the other day is like he's not as good a shooter as Emmanuel Sharp. So not thinking sharp shooter. He's not a bad shooter, but he's not. Emmanuel Sharp's like that's his thing, right? But the way Emmanuel Sharp came in from the jump and was just recklessly throwing his body around, just throwing his body into defenders, throwing his body on the hardwood for the basketball, throwing his body out of bounds for saves, and frankly, got him in foul trouble a couple times freshman year. Like the way he doesn't care if it hurts. He's going to go get the ball. He's going to go do the thing. That's the way Felesi plays to me as well. same kind of reckless abandon, same kind of play through whatever's happening kind of effort. He attacks the rim off 2 feet, hands on the glass, protects the ball with his elbows, sticking them out. Admittedly, at Utah Prep, he played this year with a kid named AJ DeBonsa, who, if you don't follow high school basketball, was like the number one kid in the class of 2026 and reclassified to 2025. And is the number one kid in the class 2025. He's incredible. He's going to make like $8 million in NIL money next year at BYU. Number one kid in that class. And so all of those, kind of like playing with Harwell for junior county, all those isolation type of sets and all that went to DeBonza. Okay, that makes sense. Totally get it. But Felesi still found ways to be really impactful on offense. Again, he's a decent shooter. No one's making a shot. He's a decent shooter, right? I like how quickly, though. So he's a perimeter guy, like I mentioned, but he's like 6'5" and strong. I saw a bunch of different weights on him. I don't know what the appropriate one would be, but he's a big, strong guy. I like how quickly he takes little guards, puts it back to them, and can post those guys up because he's got great perimeter game. He's not like a forward playing out of position, but you can't get away with putting some 6'3" guard on him. He's going to post that dude up and put him under the rim. And that aggression, I think, is something that just makes him a Houston Cougar to me. I don't know where he ends up. I know Houston's high on him. He's high on Houston. Came to visit in that. And now Cam Lomax is another big guy out of DFW. I think, I feel like I've seen him tweet about Houston a couple of times as well. I like Lomax a lot. It's nice to have a Texan on the roster, or not. It would be nice to have another Texan on the roster, right? So we're seeing a lot of that class start to shape up. This is the time of year ago, remember, we were talking about like, okay, Isaiah Harwell's high on Houston, Kingston Fleming's high on Houston. There were some guys that were high in Houston at this point last year and didn't come, right? The John Clarks of the world and all of that. I think at this point, Houston was still in on Shelton Henderson. They were in his top 6, but didn't make his top 3. So whenever that cut happened, right? I don't think they're necessarily going to happen, but these do feel like things that could happen. And I like those names. I like those names a lot. So in the more immediate future, Houston's got some basketball games to play next year. Can't just go on a preseason poll, be number 1 overall. So I want to talk about what those games look like and what we're finding out about those and what my favorite potential non-conference games are for next year right fast. But first, Locked on Coogs, Parker Andrews here to talk to you all things Houston Cougars. And right now, we're starting to see how next year's basketball season will look. The games are starting to get listed more and more. Houston officially, I guess on Tuesday, got a bye game, the double entendre there being BYE and BUY, because Lehigh is not so great. They get to play Lehigh next year early in the season. That's one of the 13 non-conference games officially that they will have. We now know of roughly 5 of them. That makes sense in a second, but you got Lehigh. You got to return the favor and go play Auburn and Birmingham. They came to Houston to Toyota Center last year for a semi-neutral site game. Now Houston returns the favor and goes to Birmingham next year to play a semi-neutral site game as well. That's 2 games. You know you're going to the NIL Players Era MTE kind of thing happening in Vegas over the Thanksgiving holiday. You have to assume you're getting at least 3 games out of that. We also know the field there, though, so you kind of know what your options are. Alabama, Notre Dame, San Diego State are all going back. I don't think from a TV dollars perspective they would make Houston play any of those teams a second year in a row. I don't think that makes a lot of sense from a marketing perspective. Auburn will be there, but you've just played Auburn, and I don't think they'll schedule that matchup. You might seem like a championship game of the tournament or something, but I don't think you'll see them in a scheduled game. Same thing goes for Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas. They're all in the Big 12. That wouldn't make much sense. So teams that would be available to play. And from the Power 4, Michigan, Oregon, Syracuse, Tennessee, all fun. Big East, you get St. John's. Talk more on them in a second. Gonzaga is going to go. St. Joseph's going to go. UNLV is going to go. And there's some fun matchups potentially in there, right? You could potentially have a rematch from Gonzaga or Tennessee. Gonzaga was a really fun tournament game this past season. Tennessee and Rick Barnes is a fun matchup always from the coaching class, the coaching styles. Barnes and Sampson, if you're living in Rock or you're new to the show, those guys are like high school level competitors against one another, both going to high school in North Carolina and just a year apart, right? I mean, they go back. Obviously, the Texas OU thing, but those guys go back a long ways, right? I look at this list, though, and I know a lot of people are saying they don't want to play St. John's in this. They want St. John's to be Houston's Big 12, Big East matchup. And I think there's a chance it could happen this year. I really do. I also, though, think that there's a more realistic chance it's UConn. I think that UConn has typically gotten best billing. Houston's shown in 2 years of fairly dominant conference play in the Big 12 that they are top billing. I kind of think that's the matchup. You'll see Houston getting the Big 12 Big East thing. And I think I'd rather get UConn in that and St. John's in this and find a way to get to play both of them, if I'm being really honest. Both teams are tremendous, really well coached. St. John's and Patino here in the Las Vegas games would be my pick there. I mentioned Tennessee and Rick Barnes. That's just a fun story every time. It's a rematch. You can talk about last year's team, but Tennessee will look a lot different as well. And so what does that look like for them? They're going to be a really well-coached team as a team with some new faces on it for Houston. You want to get that test as well. And then, look, I'm going to be honest here. My third game is a little bit out of left field. I want to play Syracuse. I want to play Cyan Anthony, Carmelo Anthony's son. And that's a 5-star, soon-to-be pro prospect. He's a one-and-done kind of guy like his father. He's also a 5-star kid in his own right. McDonald's All-American, All-Americans at It's not quite the Bronny James kind of hype, but this kid's really good, right? Cyan Anthony also is going to Syracuse, his father's alma mater. And I think the fun storyline here is Sampson playing the descendant of Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse. If you're a big picture basketball historian, you might remember that I think it was the 03 Final Four. That's the year that Syracuse wins the whole thing with Carmelo Anthony. So it had, anyway, 2003, Syracuse beats Oklahoma in the Elite Eight game to go to that Final Four, which Syracuse ultimately won the championship. I don't remember where it was, but won the NCAA championship. Carmelo Anthony had like the most impressive freshman tournament ever happened. He's kind of the, only real success story of a true freshman one and done, winning a title, being the most outstanding player on that title team, etc. Obviously, like Cooper Flag had a great freshman year, but we know how that one went. Kevin Durant didn't get out of the first weekend. Michael Beasley, same thing. The two guys that were Rutgers this year, I don't think they made the tournament, right? Like those kinds of things are the more common storylines here for one and done guys that are carrying the team on their back solely, right? The one and done guys that like get the whole team. Carmelo had a great Syracuse team around him, but also, right, was the man. That I think would be a cool, like, full circle moment. You're talking about the Sampson legacy going from Carmelo to playing against his son and the rise and fall and the Phoenix from the ashes. And I just think all those storylines, as a guy who's talked about the story every year, I think that's a really fun story to go with in that one. And frankly, it's another blue blood-ish program. They've kind of gone through the rebuilding stages since Boeheim left and but ultimately, right, that's a Power 4 program. And ultimately, like, that would be a big win. I really want that one in that. And I think that I'm alone in that. I see a lot of people online talking about Michigan. They want, revenge for Jordan Poole or what, like, fine. Poole's not there. The revenge, that's not the same thing to me. Not that Carmelo's at Syracuse, but there's just something different about that with Sampson and his son is there, right? So tell me in the comments down below. Michigan, Oregon, Syracuse, Tennessee, St. John's, Gonzaga, St. Joe's, UNLV. Who do you want to see in Vegas? And don't say your local bartender or dealer. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's been Locked on Cougs. Thank you for making us first listen each and every day here at Locked on Cougs. We're a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, the Houston Cougars, every single day. Go Cougs.